This link is for 4th grade going along with the course. If you go ahead and turn your Treasures textbook to page 346, this is where we're going to go ahead and start it. Before we begin, let's go over the vocabulary that we've encountered in this unit so far. We have sores. If someone has sores on his body, he has places on his skin that are broken and painful. Loosened. If you loosened something, you made it less tight. Mysterious. If something is mysterious, it is hard to understand or explain. Amazement. When something creates amazement, it causes surprise and wonder. Mist. If you are in the midst of something, you are in the middle of it. Responsibility. Having a responsibility means having a job or duty to perform. Patchwork. Things that made of patchwork made of small pieces of fabric. Teepees. Round-shaped tents made from animal skin by Native Americans. Discarded means thrown away. Bays. Reddish-brown horses. Chestnuts. Grayish or reddish-brown horses. And paints. Pintos. Horses with irregular spots or markings. Okay, with those vocabulary words covered, let's go ahead and take a peek at page 346. And let's talk a little bit about the genre of the story that we're going to be reading. The genre this week is legend. Now, the legend is a story that has been handed down by a people for many years, and that often has some basis in fact. All right, and also as we're reading the story, we are going to be sequencing the events. And remember, understanding the sequence of events can help you summarize a story. You're going to look for signal words such as before, after, then, later, next, or finally. These are all words that are indicators of time. Now, as we read this story by Paul Gogol, I would like you to be thinking about what gift does the mystic horse give to the boy and his tribe. All right, let's begin reading Mystic Horse, written and illustrated by Paul Gogol. In those long ago days, when the Pawnee people had harvested their crops of corn and squash, they would leave their earth-lodged villages and travel on the great plains to hunt buffalo. They had horses to ride and to carry their teepees and belongings when they went great distances in search of the wandering herds. Now, what clues can you find in the first paragraph that tell you that this is a legend or a traditional story? Well, it takes place long ago. The author talks about the Pawnee people's way of as it had been going on in the same way for a very long time. When they were not traveling and the teepees were pitched, it was the responsibility of the older boys, the young men, to look after the herds of horses and to guard the village. They would stay with the horses at the pasture throughout the day, often far away from camp. All the while, they would keep a good lookout for enemies. Traveling with the people were an old woman and her grandson. They were poor, living alone without any relatives at the edge of the village. Their only shelter was made of sticks and patchwork of pieces of old teepee covered, which people had thrown away. Nobody took much notice of them. When the people moved from one camping place to another, the woman and her grandson would stay behind to look for scraps of food and to pick up discarded clothes. They had no horse. They walked, and what their dogs could not carry, they packed on their own backs. Their life was hard, but they were happy. Now, how do you think the other people at the camping place feel about the old woman and her grandson? How do you think they feel? They're kind of outcasted. They're kind of out in the back or the side of the village. How do you think they feel? Well, the narrator says that nobody took much notice of them, so nobody probably wishes them anything ill. But on the other hand, the woman and her grandson have to look for leftover food and clothing, so the others obviously don't make a point of helping these poor people. One day, as they followed far behind the village, they came upon a sad and sickly, worn-out horse standing in the trail. He was terribly thin, with sores on his back. "Grandmother," the boy said, Nobody wants this poor old horse. If we are kind and look after him, he will get well again. He will help us carry our packs. Then I will be able to join the buffalo hunt, and we will have meat and fresh skins as well." So I'm going to go ahead and stop right there. Let's talk a little bit about that vocabulary strategy that we talked about in the previous day. The words soars and soars are homophones, or they can be considered homonyms, because these two words sound the same, but they're spelled differently, and they have different meanings. Can you tell me what the word soar means? The S-O-R-E word. Well, that word means like lesions on the skin, whereas the other word soars means like flying, soars like an eagle. Okay, let's continue. And so they led the old horse limping along behind them, and people laughed. "You've got yourself a great war horse, boy. How will we keep up with you now?" But the boy loved his horse and looked after him well. So at this point, what is the first thing the boy does when he finds the horse? What is the first thing the boy does when he finds the horse? And this is going to be the first sequence of event on our that page that you need to do. What is it? Page 98. Well, he decides that he and his grandmother should keep the horse and look after him until he's well again. So that first event is going to be the boy finds a sick horse and decides to make it well. Okay, let's keep reading. After some days had passed, the boys who were out on the hills looking after the horses spotted enemies approaching on horseback. They quickly drove the herds back to the safety of the camp. The men grabbed their weapons, mounted their fastest horses, and rode out to meet the enemy. The boy riding the poor old horse followed shyly at a distance. But the men pointed at the horse and laughed. "Look, he is the one who will leave us all behind. Boy, that good old feller for nothing half-starved horse. You'll be killed. Get back home." The boy was ashamed and rode off to one side where he could not hear their very unkind remarks. The horse turned his head and spoke to the boy. "Listen to me. Take me down to the river and cover me up with mud." The boy was alarmed to hear him speak, but without hesitation he rode to the river and dabbed mud all over his horse. Now, what important event happened after the boy is turned away from the warriors and they make fun of him? What is that important event? Well, the horse talks to the boy and asks him to put mud on his back. And the boy actually does what he says. So this needs to be the next event. The horse speaks to the boy. Then the horse spoke again. "Don't take your bow and arrows. Cut a long willow stick instead. Then ride me as hard as you can right into the enemy's midst and strike their leader with a stick and ride back again. Do it 4 times and the enemy will be afraid, but do not do it more than 4 times." While the horse was speaking, he was tossing his head, stamping and prancing his way in that until the boy could hardly hold him back. He loosened the reins, and the horse galloped towards the enemy. He was no longer an old, sickly, worn-out horse. He flew like a hawk, right to where the enemy's riders were formed up in a line of battle. The boy struck their leader with the willow stick, turned, and rode back to his people with the arrows flying past him like angry wasps. I'm going to stop right there real quick. Now, the author says that the horse flew like a hawk, and that the arrows were flying past him like angry wasps. What effect do these similes have on your understanding of the action? What effect do these similes have on your understanding of the action? Well, the similes create vivid pictures in the reader's mind. The phrase "flew like a hawk" makes the boy's ride sound exciting and fast, and comparing the arrows